Sir, I need to see that ID again. It doesn't look right.
It's the real thing, United States Marine Corps. Want the card with it?
Got a call about a stolen vehicle. Suspect was wearing a Navy jacket, ball cap. You fit it.
And you're stopping every guy who served a check? Look at the photo, the hollow seal.
Still doesn't mean you're clear.
Sergeant Jonathan Reed, active duty out of JBLM.
Can a gold badge save you when an officer has already decided you're guilty? Get your hands out of the camp. The command tears through the heavy silence of the rainy Tuesday morning, shattering the peace of the parking lot. There is no preamble, no conversation, and no assessment. Officer Miller is already sprinting across the wet asphalt, his hand white-knuckling the grip of his service weapon. Standing by the open rear door of a dark gray sedan, the man freezes. He is wearing a Navy jacket and a baseball cap, a piping hot coffee in his right hand. He doesn't run. He doesn't drop his hand toward his waist. He simply turns, his brow furrowed in genuine confusion. "Excuse me," the man says, his voice calm, contrasting sharply with the officer's erratic breathing. "I'm just grabbing my gear, officer." This is the moment where the misconduct begins, a cascade of failures that will eventually cost the city $6 million. Officer Miller closes the distance, invading the man's personal space with aggressive, predatory speed. He isn't looking at the man's behavior. He is looking at a stereotype he has already constructed in his mind. "Drop it! Drop the cup! Hands where I can see them!" Miller screams, his voice cracking. The man realizes that verbal reasoning isn't working. He needs to de-escalate this immediately. He doesn't drop the coffee because he hasn't done anything wrong. Instead, he slowly, deliberately raises his left hand. He is holding a leather wallet. With a flick of his wrist, he opens it. The gold shield of a federal agent glints in the overcast light, clearly visible against the dark leather. Beside it sits a U.S. Marine Corps identification card. "You need to calm down," the man says, his voice dropping an octave into the commanding tone of someone used to giving orders, not taking them. "I am a federal agent. I am a United States Marine. This is my vehicle." The evidence is inches from Miller's face. The threat has just identified himself as a federal asset, but Miller is too far gone, blinded by adrenaline and confirmation bias. He doesn't even look at the badge. "I don't care who you are," Miller yells. In a shocking display of excessive force, Miller slaps the coffee cup out of the agent's hand. The brown liquid explodes across the hood of the car and splatters onto the agent's boots. Before the cup even hits the ground, Miller grabs the agent's wrist, wrenching his arm behind his back with enough torque to tear a rotator cuff. He slams the veteran chest first against the wet metal of the sedan. "Stop resisting!" Miller shouts, a standard line for the body cam. Despite the fact that the man is limp, compliant, and currently being assaulted. "I am not resisting," the agent grits out, his face pressed against the rain-slicked window of his own car. "But you are making the biggest mistake of your career." Miller ignores him, clicking the handcuffs tight, oblivious to the fact that he has just assaulted a decorated federal agent on camera. The rain continues to fall, washing the spilled coffee into the gutter, while the gold badge lies face down in a puddle, ignored, disrespected, and unseen. Before we reveal the shocking identity of the man in handcuffs, hit that subscribe button so you never miss a story. Who exactly was the man pressed against the cold, wet asphalt? To understand the magnitude of Officer Miller's error, we have to rewind the tape, not just minutes, but years. The man in handcuffs is Special Agent Marcus Terrell. While Miller was likely still in police academy training, Terrell was leading reconnaissance units in Kandahar. He wasn't just a soldier, he was a decorated Marine who had transitioned into high-level federal law enforcement, specializing in counterterrorism and organized crime. 48 hours before this rainy Tuesday, Tyrell had been sitting in a secure briefing room in D.C. coordinating a multi-agency task force. He wasn't a suspect loitering in a parking lot. He was a man who had dedicated his entire adult life to the very Constitution that was currently being violated in a Seattle strip mall. He had moved back to the Pacific Northwest to lead a new field office, a quiet professional who followed the rules, paid his taxes, and yes, occasionally stopped for coffee before heading to the gym. Back in the parking lot, the reality of the situation began to dawn, but agonizingly slowly. With Tyrell secured in the back of the cruiser, humiliated, wet, and silent, Officer Miller turned his attention to the crime scene. He approached the dark sedan to conduct a search, convinced he would find drugs or stolen goods. He yanked open the driver's door and began tossing the interior. "Got a weapon!" Miller shouted to his radio, his voice triumphant. He pulled a Glock 19 from the center console. To Miller, this was the smoking gun. To any competent investigator, the placement was standard for an off-duty officer. Miller bagged the gun, adrenaline still clouding his judgment. He finally retrieved the wallet from the puddle where it had fallen. He wiped the mud off the leather with his thumb. He opened it again, this time without the fog of war he had created for himself. The details were undeniable. The gold shield read Federal Bureau of Investigation. The ID card was federal government issue. The secondary ID was military. Miller froze. The rain pattered against the brim of his cap. He looked at the ID. He looked at the gun he had just seized, standard issue. He looked at the man in the back of his car, who was watching him with a look of icy, terrifying calm. The radio crackled. Miller had run Tyrell's plates moments before the arrest. Unit 4 King 2, the dispatcher's voice came through, sounding different this time. Urgent, clipped, and alarmed. The vehicle registration comes back to a federal government fleet listing. Flag, do not detain. Verify your subject's identity immediately. A supervisor is en route. ETA, 1 minute. The blood drained from Officer Miller's face. The triumph of the bust evaporated, replaced by a sickening pit in his stomach. He wasn't protecting the streets. He had just assaulted a federal agent. A heavy SUV screeched into the parking lot, lights flashing. Sergeant Baker slammed his door shut and marched over, his face a mask of fury, not at the suspect, but at the scene before him. He snatched the wallet from Miller's trembling hand. He looked at the badge, then at the Marine in the back seat, and finally at Miller. "You better pray to God this body cam wasn't recording audio," the sergeant hissed, his voice low and dangerous. "Uncuff him. Now, and give him his damn coffee back." But it was too late. The handcuffs were removed, but the damage was indelible. Tyrell stepped out of the cruiser, rubbing his wrists. He didn't yell. He didn't scream. He simply looked at the sergeant and said, "I want your captain here, and I want a lawyer. This department is about to learn a very expensive lesson. How much is your dignity worth?" In Seattle, the price tag was set at exactly $6 million. When the body cam footage was finally released to the public, it didn't just go viral. It acted as an accelerant for a national conversation on police accountability. The video, stripped of police jargon and official reports, showed the naked truth. A calm, compliant black man being assaulted by a frantic, biased officer. The internet exploded. Frame-by-frame breakdowns showed Agent Tyrell holding his badge for a full 3 seconds before Officer Miller struck him. The contrast was undeniable. The criminal acted with the discipline of a peacekeeper, while the peacekeeper acted with the reckless abandon of a criminal agent. Tyrell did not fade into the background. He stood on the steps of the federal courthouse, flanked by his legal team, and filed a civil rights lawsuit that would shake the Seattle Police Department to its core. His lawyers argued that this wasn't just a mistake. It was a systemic failure of training and temperament. They argued that if a decorated Marine and federal agent could be treated this way, an ordinary citizen stood no chance. The city of Seattle attempted to mitigate the damage, initially offering a smaller settlement and admitting procedural errors. But Tyrell refused to settle for hush money. He demanded accountability. During the depositions, Officer Miller's defense, that he feared for his life, crumbled under cross-examination. The video evidence made it clear that the only thing Miller had to fear was his own prejudice. The verdict and subsequent settlement was historic. The city agreed to pay $6 million to Marcus Tyrell. But the check came with conditions that were far more valuable than the money. The lawsuit forced the implementation of the Tyrell Protocol, a set of sweeping reforms within the department. First, the duty to intervene was codified. Officers are now legally required to physically step in if they witness a partner using excessive force or conducting an unlawful arrest. Silence is no longer an option. It is now a fireable offense. Second, de-escalation training was overhauled. The ask, tell, make model of policing, which encourages rapid dominance, was replaced with mandatory time and distance protocols. Officers are now required to create space and use verbal warnings before resorting to physical force, provided there is no immediate threat of violence. As for Officer Miller, the badge he failed to respect cost him his own. Following an internal investigation fueled by the public outcry, Miller was terminated for gross misconduct and violations of use of force policies. He lost his career because he couldn't distinguish between a threat and a citizen. The story ends where it began, in a rainy parking lot, but this time the precedent has shifted. Agent Tyrell returned to duty, continuing to serve his country. He proved that while a badge grants authority, it does not grant immunity from the consequences of bias. The $6 million was paid by the taxpayers, but the lesson was bought by the courage of one man who refused to be broken. What do you think? Was a $6 million settlement and the officers firing enough justice for Agent Tyrell? Or should Officer Miller have faced criminal assault charges for his actions? Drop your opinion in the comments below, and don't forget to follow, subscribe for more stories exposing the truth behind the badge.